All right. Um, how are you?
I'm really good. I'm really good. I just had a conversation with a friend, and I was talking to him. I was, "How you doing?" He's like, "Doing great." He's like, "This is such a good time to be alive."
Hmm.
And everyone I talked to was like, "Man, it's so heavy." The COVID and now all this pain brought to light, and the protests. And he was like, "It's the perfect storm. It's people have been kind of forced into a period of reflection and solitude and not doing anything and not being distracted all by all of this stuff. And now these important things are coming up, and there's actually like forward motion happening on actual change in this world, on like more justice and tolerance and understanding and dialogue and actual like maybe like concrete things like legislation and people looking at things in a more just and sane way. It kind of struck me like, yeah, this is a great time to be alive, you know?
Yeah, I do. I do, but it's hard. Yeah, it's funny because I think it's a matter of can you take yourself out of this moment, right, where everything feels so intense to see what the end product might be, right? And
Yeah.
it sounds like your friend might be able to do that maybe better than I am
Yeah.
today, or at least in some moments. But it is. It's like I don't know. It's kind of like Bikram yoga, right? Like the hot sweaty yoga,
Yeah.
and people either love it and people either hate it. But I always use Bikram yoga as kind of my guidepost for something that you cannot feel halfway about, and that's kind of what these times are like too.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess it's one of those things too, like the benefits that you reap from it don't come during it,
No.
But I don't know, maybe it was a really good perspective to have because he was talking about he had just been at his niece's graduation, high school graduation, which was outdoor in a park. And there were a few high schools graduating, and the kids, they all took the graduation as a time to protest. All four of these high schools, as for their graduation, they all marched on the White House.
Hmm.
Going and marching and chanting something that was important sentiment to them. And I don't know, when was the last time that happened for a high school graduation?
Right, right. I think about that when I talk to my daughter because she's 9 now, and there's so much about this time that just sucks for her, and
Yeah.
she's very aware of that, and she misses her friends, and she misses school. But I mean, I've kind of had that same approach where I try as a parent to find, okay, what's the good that I can find in this? I say to her, you are living through history. Like I remember when I was not that much older than her, writing with Katie Gittleson, who was my best friend in like third grade. So yeah, it was about the same time. We wrote a report on the 60s and the protest movement. And it was such a I remember looking in the World Book encyclopedias, because of course there was no internet then, and just trying to figure out what the 60s were all about and being so entranced by them. But I was like, well, I'm never going to see anything like that because I'm just a kid growing up in LA. And she gets to see that. She will live through that.
Yeah, and be conscious of it and be conscious of people who have not been treated justly. And even though it's painful to consider, not as painful as it is to be, to actually have your neck kneed on for 8 minutes and 46 seconds,
Yeah, yeah.
and it will breed an empathy and an understanding in her. Or breed, not the right word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That will, help her to grow up to be a more conscious, aware person. And, I don't think there's anything more we could ask for our kids. I mean, outside of like complete world peace and
We're not getting that tomorrow.
yeah.
I saw on Instagram the other day that you were in Watts. Can I ask what you were doing there?
Yeah, I've been spending time in Watts every Friday for the last couple of months. I had been wanting ever since COVID hit. I knew that in low-income communities that there was not enough food. Like people who live check to check, and like I mean, it's a lot of people who do manual labor. It's like day to day. You know what I mean? So I'd wanted to. I had an idea to try to get people together to have a food truck that would just go around giving people food. I met a woman named Tanya, and I don't know her last name, and her and this other guy Kevin, they have an organization called Watts Community Corps,
Hmm.
and I'm starting a music school in Watts called the Watts Conservatory of Music, and someone who's on the board of directors of that, a great LA artist who's from South LA named Lauren Halsey. She introduced me to Tanya and told me that Tanya was making grocery boxes at Nickerson Gardens housing development in Watts. every Friday, and maybe you should talk to her. That'd be a great place to bring the food truck, and it just all worked out great. And so we go there every Friday, and bring the food truck. Or right now, there's a guy named Donnie Jobert who has been making barbecue and stuff, and we're just just helping and arranging food every Friday and staying there, working and hanging out, and just trying to build bridges and help out where we can, just
Yeah.
doing what we can. And it's nice. I love that community. Love being connected and making friends and helping out. And it's also really cool because getting ready to start the school there. As soon as, we're just kind of waiting on permits to get the building together and stuff. But once we get that going, it's good to, start knowing people and families, and, already starting to kind of sow the seeds of hopefully what will be a very, very long and meaningful relationship.
It's interesting though, because you said you've been doing this for a couple months now. And so this winds up being something, I'm sure there was kind of a before George Floyd sense of those relationships and those conversations. And then there's the relationships that you have and the conversations that you have now. Have you, or maybe there isn't, right? Have you noticed any change kind of between then and now and the kind of talks you're having when you're out there?
I can't really. I hesitate to be a voice for the people of Watts. I think that everyone's got their own voices. It's a community full of all kinds of individuals with their own voices and their own attitudes. But I feel like in general, like in terms of living with systemic racism and the concept of being scared, being intimidated and scared of police forces and other institutional powers, like that's nothing new there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is nothing new for them.
Yeah.
This has been going on for a long, long time. It's a place of lots of big hearts and amazing minds and great people. I'm just there to, be a friend.
So I was thinking about talking to you, and there's so many things that we could talk about, but I was kind of trying to imagine like what this whole year has been like for you. And I'm not a big one on I don't feel like, I don't even remember what I did New Year's Eve this past year, to be honest. And I don't feel like, the calendar changes by a day and somehow everything gets different. But that said, you got married at the end of last year. At the beginning of this year, you put out this book, and here's all these big new things in your life. And then along comes coronavirus, and along comes these massive, very, very important, painful conversations that we need to have about race and inequality and how messed up our justice system is. And that's such a kind of, I don't know, I wondered if this year has felt like one giant record scratch in a way to you.
Yeah, it's been a really dynamic time. I gotta say, for me personally and selfishly, it's been a great time. I fell in love and married someone who I admired deeply, and I have this family with her, and it's uplifted me and given me a stability and continues to teach me in so many ways. I remember once a long time ago, I got into this Vipassana meditation, which is this real intense meditation on solitude. And I went on these Vipassana retreats where I sat in 10 hours of meditation a day and, didn't speak, took a vow of silence for the period of the retreat. And at one point I was going to marry someone else, actually, my youngest daughter's mom, before we broke up. And I spoke to him. I said, "Hey, I'm getting to the teacher of the Vipassana retreat." I said, "Yeah, I'm getting married." And he goes, "Oh, that's nice." And he goes, he said, those monks in the Himalayas that go stand on one leg for 5 years, or they meditate for 20 years in a cave or whatever. I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Some people do that to learn about themselves. Other people get married." And and it's definitely being married is intense. It's making me grow up and look at myself in ways that, especially because my wife doesn't take any shit. Yeah. And so it's really awesome. It's not always easy, and I'm learning about myself, but the love and the family and being married, it's the greatest thing for me, and I'm so grateful for that. So that happened, and then you and I met when we spoke about my book,
Yeah.
And I guess that's like 8 months ago now or something.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It was BC. It was B-COVID. I don't know.
Yeah. But that was like, I was terrified to put that book out for so long.
Hmm.
I wrote it and then a year went by before I put it out. And I was so scared to put it out. I felt so vulnerable. And when I put it out, I was met with so much love at every turn. It just like, I think reaffirmed my voice and who I am. Because I guess, when I wrote the book, I got to express a part of myself that I don't always express in the band. For one thing, like I'm not
Yeah.
the singer, so they're not my lyrics. So I don't,
Right.
you know what I mean? And me and Anthony are much different people. And so I got to express a part of myself that I'd never been able to express publicly. And to be met with so much love around that was just amazing for me and really encouraging and inspiring and gave me like, oh, wow, well, I tried to do that and I actually connected with human beings in a meaningful and profound way. So it really inspired me to continue doing that. And then after that, in my band, we had a big change. John Frusciante, who left this is his third round in the Chili Peppers. He's quit twice.
Yeah.
And he came back to our band, and it was very painful to part ways with Josh Klinghoffer, who was the guitar player in our band for the last 10 years, because he's, a good friend and a great musician and a supportive, like awesome, loving, intelligent person. Sometimes you just have certain connections with people when you make art, and I'm sure that you've done artistic collaborations where there's sometimes someone can be the best person in the world, but it doesn't mean that you have a mutual language when it comes to the creative process. And with John, we really have a profound language that is easy and organic and natural and doesn't need to be discussed. It just is there. And so for him to come back and for us to start doing that is also a really positive development. And it's put the band in a really healthy, creatively vibrant place. And then COVID comes along, and I had been, the band had been working for a couple of months, and COVID stopped us. We quarantined and stopped playing together. And for 2.5 months, I guess, I was just quarantined up at home. Outside of my, that's what I decided, like, I've got to do something to help people that are really hurting right now, and wanted to get involved with the food thing, and gratefully came to fruition. But being home and being fortunate enough, like, to be able to just hang at home and work on music and be with my loved ones. And I've been running like crazy. And I want to talk about that too, because I saw on your Instagram that you've been running.
Yeah.
Like the quarantine, it's like the best time, one of the best times I've ever had in my life, honestly. You know what I mean? Like just having time to be with my loved ones, to like really, I did some really good creative work, really focused on music, not taking my kid to school. I'm not going to Laker games. I'm not going to rehearsal. I'm just working on stuff and doing stuff that I really care about. And the only thing that really pained me was being very conscious of, I know that a lot of people are really, really hurting that can't ride it out without money.
Yeah.
And, I've done my best to try to do my part in that department.
Running. So I got to ask, what do you listen to when you go running?
I'd never listen to music when I run. Yeah, I don't think I've never done it, and I don't think I would like it. I think, for one, I love the sound of running. I love the sound of my feet on the trail. I love hearing the birds and the wind and all of that. I run in these beautiful nature spots, and I love the sound, the smell, the sight of it. So I don't listen to music when I run, and also I don't think that I would want to have a contraption with me of any kind. But what do you listen to? Because you do.
Well, it's funny. I feel so goofy saying this. I used to listen to music, of course. I used to listen to a lot of your music when I run, so it's very strange. There's like a teenage girl in me that's freaking out right now that I'm sitting in my closet talking to Flea about the fact that I used to listen to his music while running. But actually, in this moment, and during this whole time, my run is the one part of the day where I get to say, okay, I'm going to be outside of my home and get some fresh air and get some exercise. But it's also, I kind of need that time to prep as a journalist and figure out what's going on in the world. So I listen to a lot of podcasts, and it's funny, you mentioned the monks, and the meditation, the silent meditation. And for some reason today, I was thinking, I don't even know what I was listening to, but something reminded me of the silent meditation retreats that I've done, because I've done a couple of them too. And there's always that moment. I felt like there should be a word for this thing where you don't talk for a week and then you do finally talk again. And so many of the things that you've been deprived of from the, sensory standpoint, it's that feeling that you get when you get those senses back again and you start talking again. And I love that pureness and the joy of it and the really savoring of things. And
Yeah.
I don't know, but for me, it lasts and there should be a word for that. I don't know what it is, but for me, it doesn't last very long, right?
Yeah.
Like it might last for a couple of days and then I'm back in the grind. And then unless I go through that whole thing of, not talking for a week and waking up at 3 a.m. and meditating all day, I've lost it. And I think
Yeah.
about that with this right now period, because like you,
Yeah.
I get worried about everybody that's out there, but there's some things like if I get a fresh piece of fruit from my neighbor, I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I worry how long that will last when things go back to whatever normal means at this point.
Yeah. Well, normal means like, and especially in, us being Angelinos, it means
Mm,
packed freeways and packed roads and
yeah.
more pollution and, a lot of stuff that's really difficult to navigate. And, the stillness and the simplicity of life during this time, just like in a meditation retreat, is so rewarding, and being able to savor like a simple conversation or a piece of fruit or whatever it is so great. And it really brings me to question, like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Like, I love the things about the city. I love the cultural stuff, the art, the music, the athletics, the literature, the constant availability of all these incredible things. But at what cost sometimes, like maybe it's better to be out in the middle of nowhere and like get one
Mm,
book, you know what I mean? And
yeah. Yeah.
really savor it and then think about it for a week before you get another one.
Mm, mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, I'm the same. I remember some years ago, I guess like 10 years ago now, I went to Haiti and I was in this small little village just before the earthquake. I stayed in this little teeny village called Carrefour-Prince, which was outside the city of Jeremy. And, Haiti is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. It was an incredible trip. It was just amazing. And I had all these meaningful experiences. And a bunch of different stories I could tell, but the real thing that was most profound and that I took away from it was I met all these people that were the what we the most poverty stricken places in America would be upscale there, like really upscale. Like, I mean, people I met, they were living in huts with dirt floor, with no floor. Um, to get a glass of water in the day was a real luxury. No clean
Mm,
water, lot of malnutrition and starvation. If a baby gets diarrhea, it would die. Really, very difficult living. And I met people there living in these circumstances who were so close to their spirits and whose lives were so simple by force of necessity. They just had nothing. And I, like, when they danced, like we had this event in this little village where everyone danced and they played music and I performed for everybody and everyone played music. And I never in my life have seen people dance with such joy. And I'm not talking like wild, woohoo joy. I'm talking about like
mm.
deep into a rhythm of joy and connection and community that I had never felt before. And I told myself when I left there, like, I have so much stuff, I've been a rock star for a long time. I didn't grow up with any money, and when I started making money, I collect things. I collect books. I collect records. I have cars and houses and all these things. And I thought, man, when I get back, I am gonna scale it down. I'm gonna get rid of stuff. I'm gonna live simply. I'm like everything that's happy and good to really be enjoyed comes out of simplicity and just like what we're talking about. And I got back, and that lasted for about a week. You know, and and that lesson, that really important lesson that I learned, just we get so lost in our cluttered civilization, and Look, man, I mean, yesterday I was alphabetizing my records. So I do it just to go through them and I reorganize them just to look at them all and look at all the album covers and listen to them. And it's a nice way to spend the day.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's stuff. I got so much stuff. And, I guess the simplicity of the quarantine, the simplicity of a meditation retreat, the simplicity of not having stuff. There's a lot of quality there.
Oh, Mr. Flea, I would talk to you all night, but I want you to get back to that beautiful family of yours.
Okay.
And thank you. This is, what's so funny about this whole system of recording is that I'm so used to like being able to stop recording and then say goodbye to someone, but this is it. So when I hit stop, you're going to totally disappear.
Okay. Well,
but that feels very zen too.
I hope to see you soon. If you ever want to go for a run, let me know.
Oh my God, I would definitely take you up on that. Abby, you're going to smoke my butt because I'm used to running. I run with my 2-year-old in my stroller. So cool. It's a crazy plotting affair. Yeah. But I would love it if you ever went. Yes, absolutely. And come right by the river too, man. I'll tell you what, the LA River right now, it's like this beautiful symphony or art project or something.
I actually have like a work spot place in Frogtown. And I love the LA River. I haven't run there in a long time, but I would gladly come down and run with you and your 2-year-old.
Give it away now, and then maybe you acquire it all again, and then some, not long after you gave it away. We will take up the topic of acquisition and saying goodbye to the things that no longer spark joy in haiku form, of course. That's coming up after this break.